There he is. Anyway, cool, brilliant. Well, look, thanks for coming in, guys, and spending your Monday evening with us. If you don't know who I am, my name's Brad, and I'm a recruiter. But thankfully, as I said to you all last time, that word's banned for the next hour and a half. So I'm not going to try and poach you for a job or try to headhunt you or anything like that. Yes, Scott, this is what business class feels like. You've made it to the Zoom call, so congratulations and well done. And the reason why we set this up, I think it was back in March time. It was really to kind of gather different perspectives during lockdown. And I sense there's a little part of me that thinks we may be saying that sentence again over the next couple of weeks and months. But the reality is that no one knew what was going on. And we thought, why not just chat to people really and see how they're going through it? One of the super interesting things that I found, and I don't know if you agree, but everyone seems to have their own kind of unique challenge when it comes to lockdown. So if you're working on consumer stuff, you're working on medical, whatever, every different product vertical is going through their own set of challenges, whether it's suppliers have gone bust, suppliers have moved, retail's gone nuts, the e-commerce business is going crazy. Everyone's going through their own sets of challenges. So really the goal was to kind of, I suppose, keep us all connected during that time. We did this, I think it was about a month ago, and we had Nick Chubb on from IDC and Roland, who was ex-Cola. He headed up Cola. There was some really good talks, and the feedback was fairly positive. No one got in touch to say, Brad, just don't do that again. So we thought we'll just keep going really. And so thank you to everyone that wants to kind of spend their Monday night with us. Usual kind of Zoom politics and policies here. If you could just keep your mics on mute, particularly when Jordan and Dan are talking, that'd be super appreciated. It's just we are streaming this live on YouTube as well, and I think it'd be better if we could just see their faces during their little visual speeches rather than us all popping up. So I'll be on mute in a sec to let them talk. Our speakers today, we've got Dan Barnes over at, let me do some real shameless product placement for you, Adele. Nolii. It's Nolii, it's not Nolii, it's Nolii, isn't it? Nolii, yeah. So have a look at nolii.com for your charging needs, but you do need a case which is compatible. So yeah, they're doing some really cool work. So Dan's going to chat to us about their kind of launch and kind of his, I don't know if you're going to use this as a bit of an agony aunt session, Dan, but just get some stuff off your chest when it comes to design. And then we've got Jordan here as well, and Jordan's going to chat about freelancing and how that first year went for him, and chat about some of the pitfalls that happened on that. So this is our webinar. We've also got a podcast as well. I'll briefly plug that whilst I've got your attention. So if you're a podcast person, then just search for Design Truth or IDcast on the relevant platforms. We've had so many different kind of speakers on there from agency and in-house stuff, some really cool designers, some ex-colleagues of yours, Dan. We've had people that have worked for Samsung, LV, all those kind of places. Our next guests, just so you know, we've got Merle coming on from Canada 4, which should be really good. And then we've got Jeremy and Patrick from Arrival coming on. So Jeremy's the Chief Design Officer, and Patrick Beyond's one of the Chief of Products down there. If you don't know who Arrival are, I don't really know where you've been for the last 12 months, but they should be really cool to speak to those guys. And if you've ever got any questions for any of our guests, or you just want to get involved, then just bug me on LinkedIn. Everyone's welcome. Look, what I'll do is I'll shut up, put myself on mute. If I pass you over to Dan, particularly as I've got your face on my screen at the minute, so whilst it's still there, and 20 minutes, and then afterwards, if you've got any questions for Dan, just fire them in the comments, and I may prompt you to say them out loud. So if you are not in a safe kind of Zoom space and you've got something else on the go, then make sure you are ready for when I prompt you to ask the question to him. And over to you, Dan.
Thanks so much, Brad. It's great to see everyone here. Some names I recognise and some others I don't. I've really enjoyed the podcast, and I think also the last live event. I just wanted to try to think what I can add to it, really, above and beyond what's happening. And I think for me, the bit I probably add a bit of a unique perspective on is I stopped designing things a while ago, and I moved into what was going to enable me to be more connected to the making of products. And I think to sort of, that's been what's guided my path over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I think I wanted to get a better connection to the things that I think weren't necessarily working in the process for me. I have put some slides here. If I can navigate Zoom, I'll try and bring them up. It'd be terrible.
Can you share screen okay, Dan? Or?
Technically, yes. It's just ineptitude that's stopping me. How's that? Is that visible for anyone?
All good with me. All good for everyone else?
We'll make the gross assumption that's good for everyone. Yes, I just quite grandiosely titled "Don't design products, build businesses to launch them." And I think this is something that everyone will have come up against at some point, where there's inherent obstacles where you feel you're doing really good design work and it's just not hitting, or it goes away for a long time and either never comes back or comes back in a terrible state, or it is marketed and launched incorrectly, or you think it's incorrectly. And all the work that goes in up front, the impact is just lost. And I think that was a major frustration I sort of had in the earlier parts of my career, and I felt it was something that in particular I was getting more and more frustrated with. Let's see if we can. So I'm, as Brad mentioned, I'm the design director of industrial design hardware, sorry, at Nolii. And we make a range of products for supporting your tech, keeping it going longer, protecting it, clever accessories. They all have a little bit of something about them. Previously I worked at Joseph as a senior product design manager, and for consultancies, V2 studios and designers as well. And as the images will tell you, I worked at a company, a little startup called Beryl, which went from being a bike client manufacturer through to, as of last week, they run the biggest bike share in the UK. So that was a good journey to take that through. But I started my career doing something a lot less salubrious, and it was Glen Dimplex Design over in Uxbridge. That was a great sort of in-house consultancy role, really. They had a holding company that owned a lot of brands like Morphy Richards, Stoves and Belling, Dimplex heaters, of course. You were basically tasked to work on a big variety of products, and that changed day to day. But it was really, I think, it was a marketing-led business, and then a lot of briefs would come in from marketing. It wasn't design-led in that respect. It was about hitting the brief that had been organised. And a lot of the time it was about getting the product that would sit on the Argos catalogue page best. And there's a lot of companies work like this, and it's a really successful business model. As a designer, it wasn't particularly rewarding. You never felt you were doing necessarily great work. Some brilliant designers I know come through the ranks there, and really, really talented people still work there and have always done so. But it's a different kind of area. And for me, it was one of those things where at the time, it was when Nokia were in a sort of heyday. I had a lot of friends at Nokia, and I was working on checking out some fan heaters and some electric effect fires. You take it as it comes, you do a good job of it. But for me, I was, although I was making the products, they were getting there, they were landing. It was, I think the purpose was slightly missing. I thought the briefs were off. So, the manufacturing was there, but it was off target. I found that really frustrating. I moved to V2 straight from there. This is a great little agency in East London, boutique consultancy. They work for the likes of Panasonic and LG, Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Media. And we did some really good work on some Hasbro toys. We worked on the latest Furby at the time as well. I think it was great. It was fast paced. It was everything that Glen Dimplex wasn't. It was really exciting stuff. But I found, I don't think it was the sort of time, this is back in sort of 2010, 2012. It was really good work, but we were often doing work that fed into bigger organisations, and I just couldn't tell you where it went. It went into the ether. It disappeared, and it felt like some kind of cash or PowerPoint scandal, where we were putting a lot of time and effort into the work, and either it would disappear without a trace, or it would disappear, be modified, and you'd never see it again. But it was just a complete disconnect between, I think, the sort of inception of the projects through to the outcome. And again, I was feeling this sort of this lack of control or lack of involvement, and it was just so disjointed. And I thought this can't be how it is forever, and it's not the way I'm sure it's most effective or even cost effective for people to make products. So I parted ways with V2 and went out on my own and freelance for 18 months. And I think that was good for beating back a bit of imposter syndrome, which I don't think has ever actually gone. I still carry a healthy dose of it. But it made me realise that I could stand up and do work. And you're often in those positions, it's just you and the client. There's not many more layers, and there's you and the client and the factory, or you and the manufacturer and the client. And it was a real big leap in responsibility to the difference between designing something and saying it might work through levels of removal versus telling someone it will work and they should put their money into it. Jordan will tell you more about this later. He's been doing it longer and better than I ever did it, but it was a real sort of game changer, I think, in my application. But after a bit of doing that, it was the same sort of scenario. You're only part of it, and an opportunity came up at Joseph, and I sort of followed them for years before. Your grandma knows who they are. Everyone knows who they are. It's gone from strength to strength at the time, and the job wasn't as a designer. It was specifically not designing. No, that's a real sort of paradigm shift to stop designing, to do more. And instead of working on one or two projects, we went into a young team. As Gareth's on the call tonight, he's still there doing great work at Joseph. But the idea is you're spinning a lot more plates, and you're the instigator. You work on the briefs, you define the categories, you build out the ranges, you find the talent to work on the projects, and you curate and nurture it through. And then you take it back and you get into production. You work for factories, you work for teams to launch it, to market it, you pitch it to the clients, the customers, to John Lewis, to whoever. And you're touching every part of that, and that's a really unique kind of position. And my biggest fear, I think, at the time was you step back and you step away from design. Are you going to feel that connection, that satisfaction from those products? Are they your products anymore? You didn't deliver the PowerPoint. How can you claim that? And it's like the scales are off your eye. You see it for what it is, and you realise that it's not about who did the sketch or who did the CAD or who did the render. It's about so many people touch this stuff along the way. And your role as a designer, all those skills about being an industrial designer, are so translatable. You just step back a bit, and instead of designing the products, you apply that to everything. You design that across the business, and you remove a lot of those barriers, and that frustration just drops because you're able. Well, there's lots of other frustrations, but you're in a position where you have control and you have a remit and a brief to sort of be in charge of this stuff. And you're the guy who designs the brief. You're designing that brief. You already know. You have a good sense of what's coming next. So it was a real change in level for what was happening there. And I did a good couple of years at Joseph before moving on to Beryl, which is where we worked on the bike share and the lights. That was a step up again to be design director. Really, that was a bit of a flip again of building a team who could support that ambition and managing them. And industrial designers, we tend to go deep. When that shit hits the fan, you just work through the night, or you put more into it. Can't do that with a team of people. You've got to be so much more organised. I'm not sure I was, especially at Beryl, but you should be, and you sort of work in that different kind of way. And your skills and your time about creating something that's bigger than your output. That's a really daunting thing to do, because like a company the size of someone like Beryl or Nolii, the work you do is still so critical. If you fail or you don't deliver or you get it wrong, that's massive impact on the business. It could be curtains. So it's a different kind of game and a bit more responsibility, but the commonality is just the design skills. I think industrial designers are just really well placed to apply that. But I thought, before it just gets a bit too introspective, I thought I tried to put down some reflections on what I think the main takeaways are, or the main differences sort of within that kind of operation model where you're designing businesses really. And I've not convinced anyone bigger in a startup to take me on to have a go yet, but I'll take you through sort of the things that I think make a difference certainly for me have been important. This is a really simple one. It's just so overlooked. Craft the proposition. And I've used this, and I've seen it used to even better effect over the last couple of years. When you go into this, you're the people writing the brief, you're positioning the product, you've defined the category, you know where you want it to go. You know what a product's going to deliver long before it's designed. And you should be able to say that to someone, that little mantra, that really succinct statement with 3 bullet points that you eventually down the line you might put on the packaging, but you know what that product's going to do. And through the enthusiasm on your face and the hand gestures and the noises you make, you can convey that excitement, you can convey that function. And you haven't drawn it yet, you haven't put pen to paper, you probably have, you just haven't shown anyone. But you haven't committed anything to it, but you can use that proposition. And it's a bit of, it's storytelling, it's wordcraft, it's excitement, it's building that. But beyond that, you can go into that business you're in and you can get agreement on what all those important bits, what does the business need for that product, what revenues it needs, how are you going to market it, what channels are you going through, what's your budget, how much funding have you got to do it. And you can narrow all that down. What you need to do, you can sell the benefits, the qualities, long before your designers are in a position to communicate with them. And if you can do that just with the proposition, the words, and verbally, through drama, however you want to do it, you've got such a good chance. You've got that buy-in, and you've got agreement, you've got consensus, and you've got backing, and those things will carry so much further down the line. And I think we've all worked, everyone who's worked for an agency or even in-house, you often come across those positions where you feel you're fighting. You're either fighting your marketing team, you think the design should be this, they think it should be that, but they've written the brief, or you've done it a bit differently. And how anyone ever thinks you can get off to a successful product when people can't even agree before you started drawing it, it's never going to happen. So I think whatever it takes to get that proposition, whether it's borrowed mood imagery, emotion, whatever you need to tell a story, if you can get that proposition right, that's the thing you come back to, because the design will change shape, the CAD will change, but that proposition should be constant. This is one I think it's been on everyone's mind, because we certainly want to change and save the world, but designers, kind of not zoom in this bucket, wait to save the world. So you can't, or maybe you shouldn't, but it's not designers that save the world. Collaboration and teamwork will do a good job of doing that. I think one of the things, stepping away from freelance, stepping away from Joseph and all the other things, you realise that you go into teams where there's just a level of expertise or engineering, or you're dealing with electronics or firmware, or logistics or ops. These are things that as a designer, you mentioned this, I don't know what ops or firmware or embedded systems, you're suddenly placed in a much bigger picture. You realise that you can contribute, you can really play into that. But one of the long time sort of arguments is always, design's more important than this or that, and you're fighting your corner, but it's exactly what it is, a fight. You're fighting engineering, you're fighting marketing, you're fighting. And when you're fighting, you're not listening to what they're saying or what we're doing. We're all guilty of it, but when you're contributing to that bigger picture, I think it just makes something much, much bigger. You realise these products are made by many. You can share that perspective you have on it, and you can challenge other people to it. Until you get everyone to come to some kind of amicable way forward, it's not going to happen. Going to somewhere like Beryl, where we pivoted very quickly to bike share, but even before that, we were working on bike lights. It's hideously complicated. We had accelerometers and connectivity, light drivers, battery technology, mechanical design. It's a hell of a lot going on there beyond the industrial design. I quickly realised that my role and my calling was probably to be that dumbest person in the room to ask the stupid questions. But you realise you're not stupid. And a lot of the time, people haven't thought about what you're thinking, and partly because I think I'm usually certainly not by any means the smartest person in that group of engineers or people, or I'm lacking the experience of the years they've put into it. But because of that, things can get missed. And some of that simple stuff that you feel a bit stupid saying, but it helps bring it all together. And you realise a lot of time people don't agree on the simple stuff. I think what you can do as a designer, a lot of the time, you can bring the lead to this stuff. You can bring that process, you can lead it. You've got to bring the others on that journey with you. I think that final statement of what if we do nothing, it's a really interesting one. We're conditioned to add, to improve, to iterate, to bring more on. In a design world, that makes sense. You don't respond to a client brief by saying, actually, we decided your business is better served by not doing this. In a business where you're responsible for product delivery, not design delivery, and that's the best thing you can do. You can challenge it every step of the way. What if we do nothing? And it's an interesting one to sort of ponder, because especially in the context of the impact of what we create and the environmental and resource impact that has, it's critical. Bringing new stuff to market, the design process is expensive, using agencies is expensive, but it's about 10-15% of the overall cost. By the time you manufacture it, you get the pipeline filled, you order the product, a lot more than that. And if you're not sure that product's going to have the impact in market, it's better that you hand up and say so, because it's a brave thing to do. It really is. There's a lot of chat. I think I say that because I'm old. There wasn't always a lot of chat about design thinking, and design thinking really appeals to a lot of businesses because it's in a book, it's a process. You can read it, you can pick it up, and it tells people how to, a lot of time, how to approach something. But I think it's not a comprehensive playbook in a lot of ways. I think when you start moving, it's a great tool for design, but you have to step outside of design when you realise not everyone's in design thinking, they're in product thinking or business thinking. There's a lot of different contexts there, and really you need to step beyond that and find ways to help people get into that journey. And part of that is you need to understand the languages, and I think that the things that drive other facets of organisations as well. We're sort of trained a little bit to get into unit costs, the tooling costs. It's like, yeah, it could be a bit cheaper, but that trim or that finish is exactly what we want, and that's important. Customer value, that it adds value, not just cost. We fight for that stuff all the time as designers, I think. But when you get into product economics, it's a real different kind of fish, and you understand the cost of buying these goods, the cost that when those goods arrive in the UK, you've got to pay a VAT bill, it's whacking, or you've got to pay duties, tariffs. That cost alone, that cash flow stuff is critical, and a lot of the time it makes your stuff insignificant. I think you've got to understand the impact of your product on the business you're working for or with or trying to pitch to, because we make a lot of design decisions based on what we think will be best for the user, but often it's for little stuff, and the assumptions we make need to be challenged. I think it's good to embed, if you're an agency or you're a freelancer, you're working with other people, just try and understand a bit better, spend some time with them, understand what it is they need. They can't always maybe convey that, but I think with the right set of questions, you can maybe understand it a bit better. Make the right products at the right time, yes, for the right cost. There's a real difference there. I think good ideas are not necessarily good products. The good ideas on their own add a lot of value, that they're great at a certain stage, but they're not necessarily going to stay the course. And the product that's most successful isn't always the most innovative. Joseph used to, it was a bit of a kiss of death with things like Red Dots and IFA Awards. The products that got the plaudits and the awards were often the ones that didn't sell particularly well. And there's that gulf of difference between high design and shifted units. And I think it's pitching that right, getting that ambition right, and understanding what's important, what customer value over a jewelry. But knowing also when to leave a good idea as a good idea for another time, another day, sometimes another customer, another client. But try and balance that design intent with accessibility. You've got to make your products, for me, certainly what drives a lot of this is that impact and making things that are going to go into the hands of users and customers, as many as possible, and have that tangible benefit, be chosen above other products, but continue to serve and, hopefully get some awards. But really, that impact happens when someone takes it home. They make that choice to buy your product. And I think prioritizing that market impact is something that, as a designer, you can, again, start to input into those decisions. We don't just pitch product concepts, a deck of 3 or 5 or 10 concepts to businesses. you've got a duty of care there to propose what you think is best for the business. You can only really do that once you understand the business better. But I think it's a level of service that goes above and beyond. I don't know many agencies and consultancies that are really capturing that, particularly at the moment. But I think it's something that I see as super important. And I think timing's everything. You know, you can have the right product, the right cost, but if you launch it at the wrong time. Beryl is a good example of this. We were launching bike lights, and don't think about this so much when you're not in it. But bike lights, you only put on your bike for 3 months a year, from September till October till Christmas. Pretty much, if you get through to Christmas, you haven't got a bike light, you're either not cycling or you've got one you're happy with. So that sales window is really narrow. You need to get your product in for July to get into people to sell bike lights. You miss that, go on, you wait another year. And if you don't sell it in the time frame, your product's a year old. So it's critical, really. It hits home that balance of innovation and risk and getting it all into the right hands at the right time, I think. This is an interesting one. I'm getting more interested in systems design. And you see this come into play in small businesses, and I think when you take that step back, those skills we use to design the products are so applicable to designing the systems and the machine to make the product. I don't mean machine literally, I mean the engine of a business that is capable of launching this stuff, really. And we've all suffered from it, we've all seen it, we've been guilty of this with design going in, and the client, the customer isn't in a situation or prepared to make it. I think sometimes we're better to work out where that capability lies as designers and pitch the right product for that business or that time. Do a lot of work within Nolii and Beryl and Joseph especially. They're working, those guys are 2-3 years out a lot of the time on what they're working on the roadmap. Very much a software term these days, but I think there's a dose of realism there, because everyone's shooting for that product that hits it out of the park, the moonshot. And actually what you need is consistency, and design has to be appropriate, I think, for what you're trying to do at the time, and it has to balance that risk. You have to be a bit realistic with what you're suggesting. Maybe this is a little bit different for the outside looking into businesses, because you want to make sure you're wowing and you're setting that ambition high. You're setting your stock as well. But I think it's certainly being realistic about what that business can do is critical. I found, and Joseph again, to reference back to a time before, we use the design managers to go to pitch products to John Lewis, the customers, and meet with buyers, because we found, and I really believe this, that the design managers or the people connected with that designer are the best advocates, talk with the most passion. They meet the users, you really understand it inside out. You're not faking it, you know, that enthusiasm carries through so well. I recommend that's such a good way of getting through, and I think with Kickstarter and stuff now, it's that connection. People want to know the nitty-gritty goes into it. Take that term on customer services, which I'm doing frequently at Nolii at the moment, but it's fascinating to find out how people break your products, how they don't use them correctly, how you can make them better. Build your teams, and that's the thing, that you can't be doing this all the time on your own, and you've got to find a way of getting that vision out of your head, out of your hands, step away from that CAD and get the people in who can do this, and they will do it better than you can do it anyway. But it's a difficult one to relinquish that control, I think. And it goes the same for like your factories, your preservationist design intent. Go and meet your factories, work with the ones you trust, spend your time with them. This is a bit of a leading step. Get on that packing line, put your products on that plane. This isn't me, this is a chap called Alex, who's the picture on the left is about as miserable as I've ever seen someone in Shenzhen. And the context was we were challenged or told that our packaging was very expensive, it was taking too long to build. So I spent half a day on the line building it to prove that it was a quicker job than expected. But you learn so much by mucking in. I think what the factory learned is we were probably slightly crazy and not to be messed with. So they enjoyed us for half a day and then knocked the price down to what it should have been. But I just think designers are unlike any other breed for getting their sleeves rolled up. They're quite hideous finger gloves on it and cracking on with doing it at every scale. Just to bring this to a close, the ID bit is the easy bit. I think it's probably back in tired calls where the people spitting their drinks out now enjoy it, but the industrial design should be the easy bit, because if you've got the bookended parts of this process down, you've got the agreement of your business, you've got the funding in place, you've worked out, the arguments are gone. It's a chance to, it's a unique opportunity to go and enjoy that. And I've never had a situation working with the likes of you guys and going out there to market. Good designers can do a good job if you get those obstacles out of the way. And I don't think there's ever been any doubt in my mind that the kind of job you get when you clear those obstacles out of the way is just, it's brilliant. And that industrial design is definitely the bit we all enjoy. But I think it's about, that refining that trade craft. Some stuff I said tonight isn't the torch stuff. It's not the traditional industrial design mentality, but it's the product development, product delivery, making things mentality. Keep things simple. And, it's so tempting not to do this, not to follow my own advice at times, but I think it's better to pick simple and execute higher than add complexity and fail down the line. And especially when you get into electronics and mechanical systems, I think that's so true. What I've been thinking about a lot, actually, don't be afraid to be a specialist. We're all taught industrial design to be generalists. We need to be great at sketching, great at CAD, great at rendering, great at model making. I can't sketch for toffee. I don't think anyone who's met me will advocate for that as well. But I can communicate what I need to do. There comes a point where there's bits of this I think I'm better at than others, and it's okay to do that, because especially in the mentality of working in a team, you build that team out so that you have got people who are specialists at everything, and you've got a great resource base to go to, and you complement each other, and that's what makes it more than the individuals. Stop being optimists. Designers are intrinsically optimistic about everything. You've got to be a pessimist for this, because optimism just does not do anyone any favours when you're trying to launch a product. You're better to set that bar really low and be realistic. A realist is maybe a better term than a pessimist. But I'd actually err on the side of pessimism, because I think you end up taking on, especially if you're in charge of this and you're delivering this to a business, it's your neck on the line for this. And I think that inside you can continue to be that optimist, but externally keep that pessimism out there. And the last one for me is just own those products. Champion those products and continue to do it in the way that I've spoken about with advocacy. Make them better, but understand when something's good enough, because we never stop. We remember when we launch things, what we didn't get right, what we would want to change, and move on to what's coming next, because if it's good enough, it's good enough. And what you see and what the customer sees are often really different things. And that energy and enthusiasm is so much better spent for the good of everyone involved on bringing better ideas through solving problems. Take responsibility for what you make at the beginning and at the end. I've not got this down yet, and I think this is one we can have seasons of podcasts on this. How do we find this measure of success? Because it's always been on how many units is your product sold. That terrifies me now, because it's like, if you had a product that sells 1 million units, someone's probably binned 1 million units of something else, and they've taken your 1 million units of this. What do you do about that? That's a real responsibility and a weight to what happens when you're done with that. Because next year you try and sell 1 million more. I'm having sleepless nights about this stuff at the moment. And I think as a collective, it's one to club together and work out how we bridge those gaps on that stuff. This is my every designer's got one of these, and this is my 1 million selling product, unfortunately. And I think through my entire career, I failed to eclipse this. This is literally the Pink Daisy fan, which came from an awful brief from an awful team to make an awful product. And this has haunted me. I saw this in a shop a couple of weeks ago. Someone was using it. I don't think I'll ever escape it, but be aware that what you make we'll follow you around. We have to answer for the likes of the Pink Daisy fan. But I think it's also good to remind us that no matter what we're doing, it's not always what you expect. That it's the more successful, and also that what you think is a failure might be a roaring success within a business. But I'll leave it there. For me, that's just a couple of rambling thoughts from my side anyway. But, I'd love to take the conversation further a bit later on, some questions, or if I can help with anything, let me know. Join up on LinkedIn or whatever. Thanks for your time.
Brilliant. Cheers for that, Dan. Didn't think I'd hear the word moonshot again after Boris.
I did cringe as I said it.
There we go. Cheers. We've got a couple of questions here. I need to look at our YouTube as well, see if we've got any questions on there. But in the meantime, you did get asked about what font that was. I'll get this one out of the way early.
Do you know, on the top of my mind, I can't remember that one.
We'll get back to you on that, Ben. Matt Langford's, but just curious how you would apply the "what if we do nothing" mantra in a consultancy setting. How do you go about communicating to clients that you don't believe in their ideas?
I think this is a really good one. It came up, and I think it was the design partners chaps were talking about this. And it's a good internal sense check to challenge yourselves. Is what we're doing right? And if it's not, you are better to say, because that value to the business is, whether it happens after you deliver it, might love your delivery, but if you know in your heart of hearts it's the wrong thing, it's going to come back and bite further down the line, and that does reflect in your stock and your capital and how you're thought of, because you're intrinsically linked to that through association to that product anyway. I think it's an interesting one, because I think if the willing's there and the budget is there to make product, it's about finding out what that should be, and it's up to the designers to use that resource and experience, I think, to really bring something different to that, and to nudge and to encourage and nurture into what you believe is the right direction. It's a difficult commercial balance, I get it, because it's, ultimately we're trying to make the best we can. But I think in every situation there's probably an incremental improvement. It's not about the massive paradigm shifts all the time. It's about how can we step it on? How can we help encourage and bring people along that journey? Sometimes a client will need, to be taken there in a couple of iterations. What they need in the first instance is a successful product to drive that business on. If you get that right, they'll come back and you can continue that journey together, I guess.
Good stuff. And favourite product you've ever worked on from Tom? Anything spring to mind?
It's going to be the bike. I mean, I'm a cyclist, and I really subscribe to mobility and shared mobility. How many chances do you get to work on a bike from scratch to nothing, integrate IoT into it, and piss around in a Taiwanese bike factory for 2 weeks at a time? It was great fun for me, and one that I think is close to my heart.
Yeah. Does it make a difference when you're working on something that you have a passion for?
Yeah, definitely. I think it does. And also, there's a shortcut there, because I knew a little bit about bikes, so I knew which end was which, and enough to talk sense. But I think actually that the thing that I've enjoyed the most is going into new situations and learning, what you need to pick up as quickly as possible. And IoT is another great one. And actually, it's possible coming from Jason, the world of garlic presses, to IoT dynamo powered bike lights. It's a really different world. I think there's that sort of getting up to speed and getting to scratch. That input of knowledge is just fascinating, and I think I really enjoy that bit. Whenever it is.
Joseph's a bizarre place. I've never seen so many people so enthusiastic about a bin before. I think that's the best way I can kind of put it. One final question from a chap called Mike. He's put, building on your Daisy fan, how do you think designers can try to avoid justifying those projects that we know are going to haunt us?
I mean, that product could have been worse. There's some satisfaction or knowledge you've taken that you apply yourself. I was only a year out of college or uni at that point, and the product it came from, it was even worse. It was actually called a football fan heater. It was a product for boys. It was a fan heater in the various football team strip colours, designed to sell to football fans. So it would just die on the shelves now. But I mean, what's even worse than a male-orientated football fan here too is the marketing team turning around and saying what we need is one for the girls. Let's, what can we do that might float for that one? I mean, you'd be lynched, rightly so now. But I put some time into it. I resurfaced it. I did the graphic design. I made it a nicer product than I think it was ever going to be. And 10 years later, it was still selling and knocking out, and it's a good, durable product. I think for me, I'll take the fact I applied myself and threw myself into a difficult challenge. And I think the time where we all had a Daisy fan comes across the desk, and you have to suck it up and deliver the best you can. I think it's character building, maybe. But I mean, seeing it in houses and shops still sends a shiver down my spine.
Yeah, there's a question here from Mo as well. I'll just finish on this one because I know Mo is over in the States, a serious commitment to get here. So cheers for that, Mo. And he's put, what's your measure to determine if a product is good enough to set a business around? I know agency side, they probably have similar kind of thoughts on this as well. We see a lot of spin-offs agency side. So from your perspective, what's good enough to set up a business around a product?
It's a really good question. I mean, what's the risk? I think is the first question. Whose money are you putting down? First justification or the first test of it, litmus test is, can you get people to invest in your idea, invest in you effectively? Do you convince? Can you tell people that there's a need for this? And can you back that up? Is there, Joseph were the kings of problems and solutions, and that really clear narrative around it? Because if you can show there's a problem, again, to this sort of what I was alluding to later, you can sell that problem and tell them there's a solution coming, and you can get people on board. I think you've got to go through the business case of that and look at, it's a good idea again, but taking that as a good idea is a long way to determining what's a good product, and there's a lot more involved in the economics. I think there's some great resources out there for people who are trying to take this kind of stuff forward. I'll try and find some of those and share them out to anyone who's interested. But there's great frameworks for doing so. I know Tom at Aether Design, they've been doing quite a few crowdfunding and Kickstarter.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure getting really involved in how that stuff comes together. So I'm sure there's a lot of similar people in the
I'm pretty sure Tom actually kind of answered this question in the podcast recording with you the other day. And he said, so I know Tom's here, so quote me if I said something completely wrong here, Tom. But he said something along the lines of, you've got to want to put that product in the box. That doesn't go away after you've designed it. It's going to be something that it's going to stick around for a long time afterwards. So maybe that's also a determining factor on if a product's good enough to set up a business around. Do you still want it on your desk in 18 months' time, 2 years' time? Those are the big things to think about. Just finally, Winnie, you did raise your hand, so we'll get the question across to you. How do you assess the risks throughout the process?
There's so many. There's internal business risk, the risk of failure, the risk of something not hitting with timings. I think you have regular tracking meetings is one way of doing it. So I think there's risk in terms of risk to the business on that one. And, you have to make pragmatic calls. There's a lot of work goes into companies like Joseph, where then 20% of the design work ever makes it, and there's an 80% failure rate. People like Dyson are significantly higher than that. And even though that money's spent and done, it's the cost of getting it wrong after the launch it just dwarfs everything else. I think there's risks. For me, the barrel bike's not a good one, because you made a vehicle. People go, you could either get killed or kill someone on it, and that's a real different type of risk. So you have to use a lot of structure. You go through certification and testing for that. You have to make sure people can't damage themselves and others, and it's a real change of responsibility. I think it'd be hard pushed to kill someone with a garlic press unless you significantly wanted to. The bike's a little bit different, especially a sort of share bike. So I think it's about keeping it out in the open, sharing it and sense checking it, and not carrying that with one person. There's a lot of risk can happen. And again, it's just a process that helps you come through it.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm sure there's an episode of Luther somewhere where he tries to kill someone with a garlic press. If not, give it a bit of time. Ehsan, do see a question now. What I'll do, Ehsan, is I'll ping that across to Dan afterwards for him to answer it for you. It's just we're running a little.
I'll come back to you on that.
Yeah, we're running a little bit behind. And right, what I'll do, guys, I'll just pass you straight over to Jordan. And Jordan's going to tell you about how not to freelance. So if anyone's thinking about setting that for themselves or anything along those lines, Jordan's going to be a man.
So indeed.
Take it away, Jordan. I'll mute myself, and yeah, best of luck.
I'm just figuring out the Zoom. There we go. Cool. So you should all be able to see my screen. Is that all good, Brad? Awesome. Yeah, so as Bradley said, I'm going to talk about how to be a shit freelancer. Because it's something I did in my first year of freelancing. And I think being a freelancer is something people always ask me about, or, you know, when you're in uni, people always talk about, I want to be freelance or whatever. So I thought I'd just give some insight into the lessons I've learned on that. Just a disclaimer before we start as well. I don't want people thinking this is how I present to all clients and stuff. I'm a lot more professional, but it's a Monday night and let's get a bit of entertainment in and stuff. I don't normally present like this, but let's go. Also, it is mostly sarcastic as well, so please don't do any of this stuff. Don't try this at home. Everything I've done has been under my own supervision. Quick itinerary. So I'm going to tell you about me because I like talking about myself because I'm a designer, I'm arrogant. I'm going to give you 10 lessons on how to be a bad freelancer, and then we'll do some questions at the end if you have any. This is me. For continuity, I'm wearing the same clothes, except now I'm naked from the waist down. I've got 6 years industry experience, straight out of uni in 2014. So I've been around the block a little bit. I'm Welsh, I live in Wales with that little red star there in a place called Buckley, kind of close to the English border. I'm a businessman. I've got 2 limited companies. One's called Device, which is like an innovation consultancy I've just started up. And the other one is my own limited company, how I do my freelance work through that. I'm a typical designer. I've got a black t-shirt. I've got a wardrobe full of the exact same t-shirt. I wear kind of like snazzy glasses. They're not prescription. I just bought them from like Top Man. I've got loads of books and stuff I never read. So just typical designer. I'm also going to get a Dieter Rams tattoo on my arm just to kind of express my feelings and stuff. This is a mock-up of that. I was going to get like a golden ratio thing on there just to show I'm really arty and stuff, but I thought I'd go for something a bit more punchy. So freelancing, I'm in my 3rd year of freelancing now. I left a job in a consultancy and set up working for myself. I just took the plunge really. I had 3 years experience and I just kind of dived in. So I made a lot of mistakes on the way as well. Right, straight into it, school started. Lesson number 1 is say yes to every single bit of work you get offered. Even if the client's a knobhead, even if it's for like no money or you don't believe in the project, just say yes to absolutely everything. Just because you're a freelancer, you've got to work and you've got to get that money. So just say yes to absolutely everything. Even if you've already got too much on and you're really bad at scheduling and you end up working 67 hours across 4 days, which is something I did it was 2 years ago. It was my first year. I've improved. So essentially I was going on holiday to Greece. Wasn't going with the lads like in this picture, but I had a holiday booked in. I told my fiance, no laptop on holiday, I'll switch off completely. And essentially I proposed a load of work and it came in and the deadline was when I was away. So I had like a compressed time to do it. So this was when I was like essentially waking up at 6, working straight through, stopping for lunch and dinner. And then I'd stop working at about midnight, sleep for 6 hours, wake up and rinse and repeat. Did that for 4 days. And like, I was sat at this desk with my head in my hands. Like I was thinking, I hate myself and I hate my job. And I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't know why I don't go and like work in a factory or something. So yeah, if you want to be a bad freelancer, schedule all your work last minute. Lesson number 2 is waste all of your money on pens and stationery, chairs, just, stuff. When I first got my business account, my business bank account, and I read about expenses, I felt like this. I felt like Walt. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get the best laptop. I'm going to get all these books. I'm going to get like all these nice pens and notebooks, like just spend all my money on this crap. I was like Dale Winton running around. I remember I went to Macro. I got a Macro card because I had a limited company. And I was just like, yeah, 100 Bic pens, like just all this crap I didn't need just because it was an expense. So yeah, just do that. Just spend all your money and just waste it. And the stuff you own as well absolutely correlates to your talent level. So, you know, if you've got a bad pen, you're a bad designer. So you need to buy nice stuff. Like you've got to buy all these cool books. You've got to buy like nice furniture. Like, look, I've got an Eames chair. If you don't have an Eames chair, you're probably a terrible designer. Buy a really nice laptop as well, like really slim, just, you know, like a MacBook or something. Even if you can't run CAD on it, just have it to carry around, and like a nice leather case as well. Buy one of those. Lesson 3 is don't put yourself out there just because it's scary. When I first told people I was freelancing, I got reactions like this. Everyone was laughing at me. Like, why are you doing that? Why are you leaving the security of a job? Like, you're an idiot. You often get reactions like this, like people saying, mate, you haven't got enough experience. What are you doing? That's stupid. Why would you do that? How are you gonna even find work? So yeah, it's best just to not tell anyone. Don't tell anyone you're a freelancer, because then they just won't know and they can't laugh at you then. So you can keep yourself nice and safe. Lesson 4 is let people exploit you. So just essentially, if someone wants something and they want to pay a low price for it, just let them do it. Let them name their price, and you just kind of fold and bend to that and just do whatever they please. This goes for like client decisions as well. If they say they want it red, make it red, even if it looks terrible. Work for free as well. This is great. It might lead to more work. It's really good exposure as well. And it's good stuff to get in your portfolio. So yeah, just if someone asks you to work for free, just work for free, just do it. Often when you go back to those clients you've worked for free for and be like, hey, can I have some paid work? You'll get a reaction like this. They'll be like, nah, mate. Once you've worked for free for someone once, they'll never pay you again. And you've broken that barrier of like showing that you have any value at all. So if you work for free, you're essentially deeming yourself worthless. So that's a great tip for being a terrible freelancer. You'll never earn any money. Lesson number 5, the top priority should always be work. So work is number 1, everything else is number 2 in whatever order. Forget about like a social life, forget about relationships, family, friends, everything. Focus on work. You're a freelancer, okay? You've got to just grind 24/7 and forget about everything else, because that's what you choose to do. You're a freelancer, you've got to do it. When I die, my headstone will probably look something like this. I'll have no real relationships, family or whatever. People will just remember that like I used to like use this weird thing where I can spin a cube on the screen, and yeah, maybe I can draw like a nice cube in perspective or something. So yeah, work like fuck, forget about everything else. Oh, lesson number 6. This is one I used to do a lot, is go to networking events, but then just don't speak to anyone. Just turn up to a networking event, make sure your name is like on the list, so there's evidence you've been. Post a picture on Insta, like a one of the slideshow or something like that. Then just stand in the corner, avoid eye contact with people, stay away from people, which is the law now, so that's even better. If someone tries to speak to you, you can just like look at your phone real intently, so it looks like you're replying to an email or something. This is something I actually used to do. Like when I first forayed into freelancing, everyone said, yeah, you've got to go network and stuff. And I'm fairly kind of an introverted person. Like I'm not very outgoing. So I used to go to these networking events and be like, oh, I'm really, like scared to speak to people and strike up a conversation. But yeah, that never really led anywhere. It was a huge waste of time. So definitely do that. It's not something I do anymore. Now you realize it's work and you go and speak to people for a reason and chat to them. It's all good. Lesson 7 is just be unorganized as fuck. Don't organize anything. Don't like name data in a sensible way or track where you sent it and who you sent it to. Just do it completely randomly every time. Because every minute you are working on admin stuff, you could be getting paid doing actual work. It's not billable to do your admin. So just don't do it. Don't organize yourself. Just put every working file on your desktop and just work from that. It's much quicker and easier, and you can focus on billable stuff. Lesson 8 is to embrace the guilt. So just to define what I mean by the guilt, it's like when you're not working and you're thinking about work and you feel guilty because you aren't working. It's something I have a lot. When I'm not working, I'm constantly thinking about it and trying to get my head around stuff, even though I can't do anything to solve that problem. Like you should be having some pretty intense dreams about CAD. Often I have like dreams about extruding stuff and putting draft angles on things, which it's just a great sentiment to how hard I obviously work as a freelancer, you know. You shouldn't be able to get this crap out of your head, constantly switched on. Just, you know, through the night's a big one. Constantly think about work through the night. When you're on holiday, always think about it, like those little details, like whether you included a feature in a 3D print or like how you sent the file. Oh, I've disappeared. Here I am. Yeah, constantly think about work, even though there's nothing you can do about it. Just let it consume you. Lesson number 9, and this is right. Never ever burn yourself out. Burnout is such a huge topic at the moment, with mental health and everyone being an advocate for that and looking after yourself. But you should never look like this guy. You should never be tired or overtired or overworked. Just like chill out, man. Like, it doesn't matter that you've got deadlines to hit. Just relax, you know, look after yourself, make sure you're in a nice calm state. Because if you never push yourself, then you're going to be okay all the time. So just keep it chill and stay stress-free. Like, never stay up all night, never push yourself to work for deadlines. When you're proposing work, just put like a ton of hours in so you can hit that. And you'll get pretty much no work from that. The last one then, before some question time, which I've seen them popping up, is don't look after yourself at all. If your lower back is always in excruciating pain, wear that like a badge. That's just showing that you've been hunched over your laptop for like 12 hours a day. And it's, again, it just shows how hard you work and how talented you are if you don't look after your body. Being stressed all the time is absolutely fine. Like, you know, eventually it'll grind you down, but for the minute, like, you're fine, you'll retire at some point anyway. 4 hours sleep's probably enough. Like, online it says 7, 8, but yeah, that's just, it's all BS really. Don't do any exercise and just eat what you want, like just eat crap. That's the end of the 10 golden lessons for how to be a bad freelancer. I'm going to end the sarcasm now, as that all was. So if anyone's got any questions or anything like that, just fire away, I guess. I've seen some pop up, Brad. My contact details are there as well, if anyone wants to drop me a line afterwards. Yeah.
Good stuff. Cheers, Jordan. I think
No worries, mate.
I think lesson 11 though is don't turn down a job that Brad offers you three and a bit years ago and go freelance. Really, I think that is that's the real lesson.
That was the turning point for me, I think.
That was that was the turning point. Got lots of questions here, so let me. If we take the screen share off, hold on, excellent full screen. Good stuff. Right, Alex and Hans, big fans of that from the looks of things.
Awesome.
So how do you calculate your value and define what you charge a client? I imagine that must be on a project by project kind of basis and stuff. You can't just give a definitive, I charge this amount a day. There's a lot of context around it, but how do you go about defining your value?
I think for me, this was such a hard thing to you know, I think it's one of the questions people ask a lot as well is, how do you know what to charge? And it's super hard. But the way I did it, I started off with a few projects and charged different rates. And then I essentially settled on something that I was happy with, and that I knew for that hour of work or day of work, I could produce good value for, and that I was happy with. And that's the main thing for me, is that something that you're comfortable with as a designer, that you're getting paid enough, that it motivates you to do your best work. And at the end of the day, you can be happy that you're secure. In terms of like costing and stuff, I've had lots of people say to me that, oh, you charge too much, you're too expensive. But that's only ever come from other industrial designers. And I don't know why. They've kind of always spoke to me about helping them out on projects and said, no, you're way too expensive, mate, we can't use you. But I've never had it from clients. So I think find something that you are happy with and stick to it, and don't change it unless you're not getting work. Like, if other people say it's too much, like, ignore that. Propose from projects, propose work to a client. And if they're happy with it, that's all that matters. And that you can provide that value to that client. So yeah, it's a bit of trial and error, but then just be confident in going with something that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I'd love to say that line works in recruitment, but trust me, if you're too expensive, you're too expensive, and I think you very much get shut down. In my world, what's the best way to get new clients? What's worked for you?
Honestly, the best way to get clients, like people still ask me now, and I always say I don't have a clue. Like every single client I've got, every good client I've got has been pure luck. It's been through like speaking to people, or like one of my biggest clients came from I interviewed for a job and I didn't get the job, nowhere near, but I connected with someone on LinkedIn, and then like 5 years later they put something on LinkedIn saying we need a design engineer to help us, and I messaged them and it's turned into one of my biggest clients. So like that huge negative turned into a lot of work and a really good project. But I think the key thing to get clients is to put yourself out there, to network, and just to get to know people and keep your head kind of in the industry. If you shut yourself away from it and don't tell anyone about what you do, nobody knows and no one can recommend you. So yeah, it is luck, but you need to put yourself out there and just network with people and get to know people, really.
Yeah, I'll put a caveat to that. I think within design, there's a big gap for any freelancer right now or agency to start creating content. I think there's a massive potential there for agencies, where I've always found that marketing is it's only an effort that seems to happen when things are a little bit slow. So when business is dried up, marketing, you start to see the marketing start popping up. It should be a constant activity. And I feel like for any freelancer out there right now, there's a great gap in kind of building content. I think building content's a great way to kind of engage in that audience. If you need some good examples, then check out something like Sam Does Design and what he's doing. He's got like something like 10, 15,000 YouTube subscribers or something stupid like that. You know, having that is a great way to get in new clients, I'd imagine. So look at building content rather than this kind of cloak and dagger approach that sometimes comes with industrial design. What's the best thing about freelancing, Jordan, and what's the worst?
The best thing is just being able to pick and choose your own work. Like often it doesn't happen because you've got to win money. Like you've got to get working. But if you're lucky and you work hard, you can pick and choose good projects and work on stuff you really care about. One thing I do is I reach out to businesses who I admire or who are doing something I really care about, and I try to work with them. It doesn't always work, but it feels like you're more in control of what you're doing. Whereas like, working internally or for a boss or whatever feels a bit like you're helping them achieve their mission. Whereas when you're freelancing, you're trying to achieve your own mission, and it just feels a bit more fulfilling, I guess. So that's the best thing. The worst thing is probably the insecurity. I'm at that age now where I'm looking to get married and have a house, and like I really need a new car as well. But all that stuff, it's like I can't get finance because I'm self-employed. Getting a mortgage is going to be tough, so I need to think about a mortgage advisor. And just not knowing, next week someone could say to me, right, that's it, contract's over, project's over, and I could have no work and no income. That's the hardest thing, but I guess that also fuels you as well. So it fuels you to work hard, and on those days where you're kind of unmotivated, that fuels you and just gives you that fire to keep going. So yeah.
How long does it take to get some clients in, would you say? Because if I think about my job, for example, if I was to work for me tomorrow, I'm not going to bring revenue in until month 3, month 4 at the earliest, because it takes a cycle of getting someone a job and they hand their notice in, all that kind of stuff. In your world, how long would you say it takes to start getting those clients through the door? And to good clients as well, because you're never going to get these great clients first up. You're always going to go through the shitters to get to the ones that you really want to work for. So if someone's thinking about it, do they need to be thinking, actually, it's going to take me a few months to get somewhere? I'm pretty sure Tom on the podcast is something really similar. It took months for these kind of, it wasn't just you open up Jordan Burns Limited and all these clients start rushing into you. It takes time. So have you got any idea on kind of timescales?
For me, I was in a full-time job, and it was over a kind of time period of a few months. I decided, right, I'm going to go freelance and just do it. So I emailed and texted and called every single person I'd ever worked with, and I was just like, I'm going to go freelance. Have you got any work for me? And luckily, one of those contacts said, yeah, we've got a contract for you. And it was at a really low rate, doing like SolidWorks all day. But then that allowed me to jump out of my permanent job and into a contract that secured me. So I was super lucky. But with that meant I had like a dry period of a month. So I finished my job, I got my last paycheck, and then there was another, I think it was 6 weeks where I got like first invoice paid. So that was just a really tight time. That was just, living like beans on toast basically for 6 weeks until that first invoice came in. But it does take a while to build a client base. I'd say after 3 years now, I'm at a place where I'm fairly secure and I've got lots of work on, so it's quite robust. So if one of my clients said bye to me tomorrow, I'd be okay. Yeah, it does take a while. You've just got to kind of be prepared for it, and just take that leap. But as scary as it seems as well, not getting paid for X amount of time, you'll cope with it. I think, people live off a lot less money than most industrial designers on the average wage, so you can probably survive for an extra 4 weeks or something.
Yeah, cool. Question from Seb. Best learning outcomes from any failed projects or client relationships? How do you turn them into a positive?
Probably the best failed outcomes have been where either I've approached someone to work with them or they've approached me to work with me. And it's just like straight away, you can just smell they're just a dickhead and they're going to be a knob for the whole project or whatever. And I think you get because I'd worked in the consultancy before and I'd worked with kind of bad clients, you can smell them out quite quickly. And then, there was one bit where one time where I'd put a proposal in and they came back and they were like, oh, can you do the first bit for free? And then we'll give you like an extra rate for the rest of it. And with things like that, or, can you do a day's work for free to see how you work? Straight away, it's just a no, like just say no to that work straight away. Because it'll lead into a more complicated, horrible relationship, and it's not good. And I've been through it kind of once where I've said yes to do stuff for free, and then it's turned into the client demanding stuff and demanding work last minute and things like that, and it doesn't turn into a good relationship. So the best thing I've learned is just to say no to knobheads straight away and not even entertain it, even if you've got no work on. If you think someone, you just straight away say no to that.
Yeah, I'd advocate for that on my side. I've worked with a few in the past. Fish said, outside of COVID, do you work remotely or kind of co-locate? Do you go into someone's design studio? Do you work from home? What's the last few months been on that front?
So the last few months have been sat here for however many weeks now. But usually it depends what the client wants. I can be on site with my own kit, or I work with some clients who are like super confidential, so I have to go in and use their equipment and their CAD licenses and filing systems. So it really depends, but it is a mixture. I can be like on site for someone, or I can be at home for the day, or it's a real mixed bag really, and I quite like that as well. Traveling around and seeing different people, so it's good.
Is there much that you have to? For a minute, you kind of touched upon it in one of your lessons, right? Don't buy fancy chairs, all that kind of stuff, but. Yeah. Are there like absolute essential purchases you need to make? So you need a SolidWorks license, or are they absolute, you need this, otherwise you're just not going to get work through the door? Or are you at a stage where you're thinking about, if I got a 3D printer with that, where are you at in terms of what actual bits of hardware do you need to be a freelancer?
Well, when I started out, honestly, I had a laptop that was like 3 or 4 years old that I got when I was in uni, and it was like it was 500 quid or something, and I was using Autodesk Fusion 360 for CAD, which is free. So it was literally the bare minimum I could have to do work I had. And you can be super lean with it as well. So like you mentioned the SolidWorks license. If you want to be freelance, don't go out and buy a SolidWorks license, because what I've done is I've got a relationship with a reseller, and basically I've rang them and said, if I purchase SolidWorks today, can I have it in the next 4 hours or next day? And they always will. So if a client comes to you and says, we want to do this project, you need SolidWorks, and if the project's going to be X amount and SolidWorks is this much, just phone the reseller and I'll get it to you, next day. So you don't need anything. You don't really need anything up front. I'd say things that have helped me is having like a really good computer, really good laptop, powerful, and just somewhere comfortable to work as well. You don't want to be like working at your kitchen table or your sofa, just somewhere good you can sit and focus.
Yeah, cool. Right, there's a question for Ben. I'm going to get Dan in this one as well, so make sure you're ready, Dan. It's, how do you feel about using freelance as a foot in with studios, especially at a junior level? And I also had a question on YouTube, which is asking for advice for graduates. I think there's a few graduates in here, so we'll kind of combine both opinions as one. I imagine it's pretty shit to be a graduate at the minute. So have you got any real tangible nuggets of feedback rather than just just keep working on the portfolio? Have you got any real nuggets of kind of stuff that they can actually take away from this and then help them on their path? But is freelance a good avenue to go down that route? Because again, you don't want to be working for free, do you? And I think you could easily fall into that trap at a junior level.
I think if you can freelance and balance that alongside another job or to get into somewhere, just do it. Just try and find that work. I think that one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't start freelancing sooner, because if I'd have started in university, I'd have had a better footing coming into it. So just try everything and expend kind of every avenue, to whether it's to look for freelance work or to look for a permanent job. Contact everyone you know, speak to everyone, because if you don't tell them you're looking, or tell them you're looking for freelance work, or you're doing this or whatever, they don't know and they can't recommend stuff to you. So definitely just use your network, because you know more people than you think you do. I often speak to graduates, and I spoke to one a few weeks ago and he was like, oh yeah, I know someone at this consultancy who's a manager. And I was like, just ring him and ask him for a job. Like, it's that simple. So yeah, use your network, definitely. I don't know what you think, Dan.
Yeah, I think you sort of, I don't envy anyone who's graduated recently. It's a really tough time for everyone, but especially if you can have skill and talent, but the thing you don't have is experience. It's really hard to try and accumulate that. I think there's only so many sort of self-directed projects you can work on without going insane in your own place. But I think you got it right. Reach out to people, be persistent. I can think back a few times actually with consultancies actually who got in touch when I've been at Beryl. There was a few people who just kept on asking if they could meet me, have a coffee or something. And in the end, we ended up having a working relationship and doing projects. I think trying to find a way where you can take the load off. You're not asking for something in particular, but if you could just ask for someone's time, if they give you 10 minutes of their time, anyone you're speaking to will probably recognise the situation you're in. And I think you've got a good chance of getting some time and advice. And one of the biggest qualities, if you're looking for graduates, you're coming out, it's a difficult time because you're at a base level where you've got a lot of the same skills and experiences as your course mates. But the fundamental thing people and CEOs want is someone who can come in and help and get on with it and be self-directed and enthusiastic and just get down to work. I mean, I think the worst thing you can have is too many preconceptions about what that role is. I think the role is to support the output of the studio and do that in whatever is required at the time. But I think keep open contact, keep trying to get in touch, offer coffees, and see what you can get, because you will know more people than you think you do, even by degrees of separation.
Yeah, what I would say now as well, I'm finding that lots of people are far more accessible than normal. Yeah. So in times gone by, getting someone for a coffee isn't that easy, but trust me, you can get someone for a 5-minute chat on Zoom a lot quicker than you would have done in times gone by. So once you've built that rapport, and it goes back to the thing, if you start building content, I just don't see it as advice it's giving out enough. If you don't think there's the value there in using it, then create the value. Start building content, start developing rapport and relationships that way. And if it isn't value, at least it's perceived value. Trust me, ever since I've started doing this over the last few months, I've had conversations with people that I've never spoken to in a million years, or people that have been ignoring my phone calls and messages for months, and all of a sudden they're calling me. It's because there's the value, there's perceiving a value there. And I think graduates, rather than kind of perhaps feeling a bit sorry for yourself, start developing content, honestly, particularly if you've got a half decent camera. I think you'll go far. Because there's a massive space in that right now. But if there's any other questions that perhaps come through, or if you're thinking late at night and you had this question, then feel free to kind of reach out to Dan or to Jordan independently. I'm sure they'll be more than willing to go through it. Alternatively, just drop an email to hello@designtruth.co.uk. I try my best to look at it. Sometimes it does slip for a few days, but I do my best to try and get back to people on there. As always, use the hashtag DesignTruthLive to any of you lot on social media to make sure you've let people know that you've been here on a Monday night. And as I said to you earlier, our next couple of podcast guests, we've got Mel coming on from Canada 4, and we've got Jeremy and Patrick coming on from Arrival. So that's going to be really cool. Thank you to anyone that's listened to us, watched us, liked us, whatever. Really do appreciate it. We'll try and do this again, I think once a month or once every 6 weeks or something like that. If you do want to speak, then please do get in touch. I'm pretty sure I've got Vish nailed down as a speaker next time. So there's one spot that that's been taken. But anyone else that wants to speak, let me know, because if you're not, then I might have to speak, and no one wants to hear that for 20 minutes. So to avoid that happening, then please do get in touch with us, and feel free to share any insight that you've got. So right, cheers guys, I'll let you go. Monday evening, and we'll catch up soon. Classic Zoom bye. See you.